Hello and welcome everybody. So we continue with our Gambit guide, and today's lesson we just follow the four knights opening and the second part of Rubenstein Gambit. So today we will look more at the outcome of the move knight takes e5, which becomes one of the, I would say, main reaction of white in case of Rubenstein, very aggressive gambit line. So white in the first games when this knight e4 line happened, moves the bishop to c4, sometimes to a4, and a few games were played when white decided just to capture e5, immediately to capture the pawn, allow black to capture the bishop on b5, and after knight takes b5, white just ready to castle very soon, and maybe when black is going to win the pawn back on e4 to use his positional advantage, I would say better development. So one of the game which played also by Akiba Rubenstein against Yefim Bogolyubov continues that way. When after knight takes e5, Rubenstein wrongly captured immediately knight takes e4, and look what happened after it. Knight takes e4, knight takes b5. I believe that when Akiba Rubenstein looked at this position at home, that he didn't find any problem for black. So black is intended now to play d5 and just to develop his both bishops to e7 and to e6. So knight from b5 always could go back to d4 or to move to d6. So it looks like quite safe position for black. Unfortunately, all this I would say positional ideas are not so real, because white is having strong tactical move knight takes f7. Easy to see that tactical weakness of the knight on b5 is not allowing black to capture on f7. So after king takes f7 and queen h5, white just wins back this knight on b5 with a huge advantage. In that case, black cannot play even king g8, because this will lead to the checkmate after queen d5. And after g6, queen takes d5, it's no question. So white is keeping pawn up and better position. Of course, black is having some compensation. Let's after d5, knight d3, and maybe c6. But still, white is a pawn up. After knight takes f7, maybe this still was the home preparation. Queen e7, knight takes h8, queen takes e4, king f1. So maybe this move somehow underestimated by Rubenstein. So because white choose not to exchange queens, so in case of queen e2, definitely black is a very good position, very good situation after trading the queens, and just later on we are going to win the knight on h8. More or less black is having no problems, so 2 pieces for rook. But by playing king f1, Bogolyubov shows Rubenstein that a position, the black's king on e8 is just seriously exposed. White is threatening to start d3s and develop the bishop from c1. Queen could go always with a check on h5. White's rook is coming to e1. And the most problem here is that black simply cannot win the knight on h8. So this knight from h8 always could back home via f7, since black has to spend time for taking the king out of the center. It's just very difficult, very hard to play now with these black pieces. Look what happened. Knight d4, d3, queen f5. Black is trying very hard to prevent white's bishop from going away. So now if bishop e3, knight e6, and black is safe. But once again, Bogolyubov shows that he is not just good player. He is a fantastic player who played 2 matches on the world title against Alexander Alokhin. So h4, very strong move. White is also preparing to lift the rook via the third rank. At the same time, the bishop found the good square on g5. b6, bishop g5, g6, finally trying somehow to win the knight on h8 after bishop g7, but it's too late. Queen d2, completing the development and threatening to bring the rook to e1. Suddenly black's king is the nice target for all white pieces. Bishop g7, rook e1 check, knight e6, h5, black is done. G takes h5, rook takes h5, bishop takes h8, queen b4. White is having decisive mating attack. So all his pieces extremely active, just dominating the board. So queen b4 threats mate on e7, force black to play c5, and after queen h4, king f7, and bishop d8, white is also threatening rook takes h7, threatening the queen, threatening queen e7. Black is just hopeless situation. Queen g6, rook h6, and Rubenstein captured queen takes h6, but of course this cannot save the game. After takes, knight takes d8 and queen h5 check. Black is going to lose one of the pieces, or his king is going to be checkmated. Very difficult exam for the 4 knights variation Rubenstein's gambit. So only, of course, after this move, after this idea, knight takes e5, so Rubenstein started to pay serious attention, so how to react in case of knight takes e5, and he found the solution and worked out very nice, very interesting counterattack. So let's look at the position once again. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop b5. In his game again, Rudolf Spielmann, which also played knight takes e5 like Efim Bogolyubov. So in that situation, Rubenstein decided not to capture on e4, not to capture on b5, but to start with queen e7. And this is a key move in this situation. So what to do? So white has to move the knight somewhere, or to play f4. f4, played by Rudolf Spielmann. Knight takes b5, d6, knight f3, queen takes e4 check, king f2, and knight g4 check. So it's extremely important for black to continue checking the king, otherwise black's king is in danger. So white is also threatening to play rook e1, so it's necessary to send away the king from f2. Now white has two options. One is to play king g3 and one is to play king g1. So first of all, after king g1, the rook is not going to attack the black's queen and the king from e1. So it's locking the rook, and black is having quite nice position after king d8 with two bishops. h3, knight f6, and position approximately equal. So black sends away the knight from b5, so then develops the bishop to d7. Maybe just this bishop also could develop to e7. Still, position is very, very complicated. Let's say one of the games between Opachensky and Rubenstein in Mirana tournament 1924 continues. d4, h5, knight g5, queen e8, knight c3, bishop f5, king h2, and now once again white is threatening rook e1 when Rubenstein find combination knight g4, solved all his problem. Takes king g3, rook takes, queen takes, and f6. Suddenly white's knight is trapped. So after bishop d2, f take g5, this very complicated game finished the draw after 39 moves. So once again, this Opachensky against Kiba Rubenstein, Mirano 1924. And definitely the main and the most dangerous move here is to go with the king to g3. This is a critical line because white is still keeping the threat to play rook e1. Queen g6. Queen e2 check. So of course this position started to be the point of all black defense, all black's counter-attack, I would say. Because if in this position white would find some kind of advantage, that all variation just not possible to play. And easy to see that queen g6 is the best continuation, since king d8, h3, knight h6, d4 leads to the clear advantage for white. Bishop e7, rook e1 happened in one of the game between Rubenstein and Bogolyubov played with white against Rubenstein, third game of the match. So white achieved clear positional advantage after queen g6 check, king h2, and rook e8, c4. White is controlling more space, and still position of black's queen on g6 is not so clear. So white always could try to move the knight back on c3, then to d5. The bishop could be developed to d2. White is having more space, despite the fact that black is having two bishops. Not so clear where to develop this bishop from c8. So the critical position of this line, of course, is the queen g6 move. An important question: what would happen in case of knight takes e7? King d8, knight h4, or to start with knight h4, which is, according to the theories, the main variation. and to capture the rook, knight takes a8. In that case, black is having g5 answer, and white's king just under very, very strong attack. Take on g5, I can play also bishop g7, also d5, with idea bishop d6. So instead of capturing, first of all, white could try and to start with h3, threatening h take g4. Knight f6. And only now knight takes a8. So black is having rook down. After knight e4, king h2, and queen takes h4, queen f3, clear advantage for white. So the knight has to go from e4, then white is playing just simply d3, develop the bishop to e3. All this was very nice, but about 100 years ago, Georg Wagner found a fantastic combination for black in this position. So suddenly, black is sacrificing the full queen. Queen takes h4 check. King takes h4. Knight e4, threatening the checkmate after bishop e7, against which white hardly even has defense. Since after g4, bishop e7, g5 and h6, no way to stop, h takes g5, discovered, checkmate. So if after knight e4 white plays queen g4, still doesn't help white. Check on e7, queen g5. Bishop take g5, f take g5, and h6. Similar problem, threatening the white's king on h4. g6, f take g6. Next, g5 idea. So white's king in the maiden net, or maiden box, as we can see here. Rook f1 will be met by g5 and knight g3, winning the rook, and of course huge advantage still for black. And the d3 cannot save after g5, king h5, bishop f5, d takes e4, g6 checkmate. So after this Wagner's variation was discovered, that becomes clear that white cannot capture the rook on a8, and thanks to this tactical opportunity, so black is keeping very good position. So let's back now to the main game, to the Spielmann against Rubenstein. Then when after queen g6, Spielmann played queen e2. But now, of course, black played king d8, rook e1, bishop d7, so avoiding the threat of queen e8 checkmate, knight d4, and black is getting the pawn and better position. Check, takes on c2, knight takes c2, queen takes c2. Black won a pawn. White has some activity for it, but the compensation probably not enough. Since black's two bishops and quite safe position of the king, slow Rubenstein realized his material advantage. Look at that. b4, a5, bishop a3. So now rook from a8 already in the game. After a takes b4, bishop takes b4. Rubenstein decided just to avoid any complications with rook takes a2, so he simply played back with the queen to f5 and slowly, step by step, improved his position. White simply cannot create any attack against the black's king on d8. And after 45 moves, Rubenstein won this important historical game. So after this game against Spielmann against Rubenstein, nobody seriously analyzed this, I would say, outcome of knight takes e5 move, and more or less all back to the position after knight d4 and bishop a4, which becomes one of the mainstreams of in the theory of the four knights opening line. Bishop b4, knight d4, and here bishop a4. So what we can say is that today's theory says also that black could play also bishop c5, and after knight takes e5, c6, also c6 immediately possible. So let's look at one of the game played also almost 100 years ago, when between Van Gleden and Adolf Holland, when black used all the main ideas of the Rubenstein gambit in the four knights defense. Bishop a4, bishop c5, d3, short castling. Okay, first of all, always white could try capturing, let's say here, the knight on d4, if you would like to avoid any complications. But after e takes d4, a knight somewhere to e2 and d5, definitely black's position is better. Look, white's bishop is on a4, so blacks could simply develop the bishop on g4. Later on we will take control over the e file. Black is having slightly better position in the center, so slight space advantage. So just cannot be recommended so easy way for white to play. And if white captures on e5, once again we can play d6, we can play d5. The pin of this knight on f3 is so unpleasant. White just cannot castle so easily. Black is also intending to play b5 and then b4. All his pieces are so active. So especially this domination position of knight on d4 gives all the additional positional advantages for black. And usual idea which we studied for so many lectures, that black has to develop his pieces very fast. If you have opportunity to open up the center and to use your domination, this is the best strategy in such a situation, especially when position is open. Okay, so knight takes e5. That would happen in the game. Knight f3 and bishop g4. White decided that weak position of a knight on f3 is not so dangerous, because simply can develop the bishop to e3 and get rid of this knight on d4. So after bishop e3, threatening bishop takes d4, looks like for a second that white's position is quite nice. knight d7, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4. Black is intending to come with the knight to e5. Additional threat is to play f5. Strangely enough, white is having this position extra pawn, but the position is very, very unpleasant. So maybe best reaction here was to play bishop takes d7, queen takes d7 and h3, trying to exchange the pieces. But white wrongly evaluated this position as better and played queen d2. So this is quite serious mistake, which allows black to develop his attack very successfully. Bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and knight e5. The problem of white's king in the center still cannot be solved. Now, if queen comes to e2, black simply could capture on c3, and after queen f6, nothing could stop white from losing the pawn on f3, which brings black clear positional advantage. Once again, look at the position of bishop, like in the offside. So white decided to protect this pawn f3 with the king and to play king e2. Queen f6, increasing the pressure over the f3 pawn. f4. Now knight g6 could be met by knight d5, and white is in just very nice situation. Suddenly it's coming another sacrifice. Queen h4. Probably this move missed one glider, because after queen h4 black is threatening in case of f takes just to capture on f2 and to play queen f3, and the rook on h1 is gone. So what to do? What to play after queen h4? Additional queen g4, aiming everywhere, and the knight f3 leads to the critical position for white. So queen h4, suddenly from the normal position white is almost hopeless. So white played rook a to f1, queen g4 check, f3 once again, hoping for the best. After queen g2, king comes to d1, and black lost his attack. Unfortunately, knight takes f3. White knight on f3 is just untouchable. After rook takes f3 and queen g2, black is winning one or maybe even two rooks. After king d1, queen takes f3, etc. So, bad luck. After knight takes f3, white just has no move. Queen d1, queen g2, and white resigns. There is a checkmate. So very fast, rapid attack in this game just shows great potential of the black's attack in the 4 knights opening line and the Rubenstein gambit. Okay, let's back, and I would like to show you then after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop b5, knight d4. Was other other ways to play this position. Definitely, as I said before, knight takes d4, e takes d4 leads to the clear equalizing, and after bishop a4, 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . 4 . bishop c5. Today we say that short castling probably is a wrong move. Knight takes e5, d6, knight d3, bishop g4. So this game which we saw previously, queen e1, knight f3, g takes f3, bishop takes f3. In one of the games happened here, knight takes c5. And after knight g4, there is no way to stop queen h4 with a checkmate. So another typical attack in the Rubenstein's gambit. In the game between Biskup and Bernes and Brno tournament 1953, after bishop d7 and queen h4, white just simply resigned because there is no way to stop. Or queen takes h2 checkmate, or bishop take g4, queen take g4. And this is also checkmate. So let's back. Definitely, it's now absolutely clear that for white, capturing the pawn on e5, you have to play it only when your king is still on e1. So that's why today, usually white is trying to capture on e5 immediately in this position, not playing short castling, which is a serious mistake. And in our next lesson, we will look at the newest development in this very sharp variation. So I will show you all that also in the very top level, chess players still use 4 knights opening, and the Rubenstein variation, Rubenstein gambit, was analyzed even by the world champions. Even Vladimir Kramnik has his Rubenstein variation in his opening repertoire. And I believe that he prepared this already years ago, before his World Championship match for the title against Garry Kasparov in 2000, when for the first time Vladimir Kramnik decided to play after e4, e5 and to build the Berlin Wall after against the Ruy Lopez. So I believe that against the 4 knights opening line, he chose that Rubenstein will be his main weapon. Thanks everybody for watching. I believe that you enjoyed the lesson and enjoyed the combination and the opening line. Very sharp, very interesting opening line, which was played already more than almost 100 years ago. And already there, the analysis of this interesting variation was done by greatest Akiba Rubenstein, and on his game also we studied the main and the most important ideas. And as Alexander Alokhin said, that maybe Rubenstein variation was one of the most important line which Rubenstein played in his during his chess career and analyzed. And if you have any questions regarding the Rubenstein gambit or some other gambits, you can find my website www.chesslessons.wordpress.com, and just to send me your questions, your requests. I always welcome all my students and all members of ICC. Just see you next time, and follow me on the 3rd lecture about Rubenstein's gambit in the 4 knights defense. Bye, see you.